Hello, everybody. Thank you all for being here. I know it is bright and early. As Leila mentioned, I hope you all have a coffee. It's currently just hit 6 p.m. here, so I'm actually just wrapping up my day. I am based in Melbourne, Australia, so we're literally on opposite ends of the spectrum here. A very, very busy day, and I hope that I can stay awake and be fully present for all of you. If you have any questions at any point, chuck them in the chat and we'll get to them at the end when we do Q&A. I also tend to be like just pretty casual. I really don't mind people interrupting me or starting conversations. After all, this is a networking talk. Feel free to jump in. If you have a specific question about a thing I'm talking about, I really feel free to interrupt me. So I'm gonna share my screen and get started. So this workshop is about networking. And the idea behind it was kind of, like, how do you network without feeling like a total asshole or super slimy? A lot of people have problems with the word networking, which I fully understand and appreciate. The term networking feels like this like cold mechanical exchange of business cards where we're all in suits and, have a horrible time. But as we get into it's actually, it can be a lot nicer than that. So I'm going to do this it says 6 parts here. It's really more like 8, but we're going to start with an introduction, go through the basics, then talk through your digital presence, different places you can network, how to navigate the process of networking and meeting people. One approach that I find really great for networking, and then the idea of like being a node, which I'll get into later. But before all of that, hi, my name's Liam. I'm the managing director for a little indie company in Melbourne, Australia called Summerfall Studios. Summerfall started, early 2018 with me and David Gator, who's the lead writer, or was the lead writer of the Dragon Age series. And we are currently working on a game called Stray Gods, the role-playing musical, formerly known as Chorus. And we've been working on that for, what feels like an eternity. We've still got a little way to go with it. But I've been in the industry for just over a decade now, I think. And a lot of my success, the entire reason that I was able to found Summerfall in the first place, is due to having a pretty extensive network and having lots of friends in games who I could ask for advice, get introductions from, and generally hang out with over time. As I mentioned, it also says I'm a complete dork, and that is absolutely true. I want to reiterate here that I've been in the industry for a decade, and that doesn't mean that anything that I'm about to say specifically applies to you. I want you to take all of this with a grain of your own salt, apply it through the lens of your own experience. I am a cis white dude, and while I am gay, that doesn't mean that I see the world through your lens, that I have your experiences. And I want to acknowledge that my experience is not going to be your experience. And that's totally fine, but I hope that you're able to find something useful here. So, what are the basics of networking? So first, we're going to talk through what is networking, why we network, and what is networking not. So I think one of the biggest misconceptions that I hear about networking generally is the idea that it is this cold mechanical process. And the reality of networking over a career is it's just about making friends. It's about doing programs like the one that you're doing. For me, that was a program called the International Ambassador Program in 2014. Which wasn't a mentorship program or anything like that. It was a scholarship program that was run by ex-volunteers of GDC. And I was lucky enough to get awarded a GDC pass as a part of that. And I was working in the States at the time, so getting to GDC was not financially easy by any means, but made a lot more accessible. And those are people that I still talk to today. I still reach out to a bunch of that group. They're still my friends, and we've all helped each other throughout our careers for a very long time. Making friends is probably the most powerful thing that you can do throughout your career, in your life in general for sure, but specifically in your career, because the people that you're hanging out with right now, they're going to hopefully stay in games. They're going to be with you through the highs and the lows. You're going to see each other at various events. I'm sure the people in this program that you're with, like, you're probably going to hang out at events. You're going to get to know each other better. And hopefully when the time comes and you're looking for a job, or you need an opportunity, or maybe you're hiring, you can come back to all the people that you've met through this program and others like it, and just your friends, and help them out, the right person at the right time. So the ways that we utilize our networks, and I use this term utilize, it does feel a little like manipulative or superficial, but it's really the process of just asking for help or helping people. It's a really powerful thing to be able to ask for advice, to get feedback on something, to be able to help someone else, to facilitate an introduction. I'll go into this a little bit later, but like a lot of Summerfall was founded around me asking people, oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing. Can you please go over this budget spreadsheet for me? Can I pitch my game at you, and can you tear it apart for me? Like, please rip me a new asshole and then help me rebuild that asshole so that I can then pitch it to publishers. These are all things that my network helped me do. Summerfall wouldn't exist if it weren't for all of the people who agreed to lend time and energy to helping me to refine what we were doing. And I'm very lucky to have had a huge amount of people to do that. And the reason I had a huge amount of people to do that was because I had spent a lot of time investing in getting to know people and going to events and giving talks and, being on Twitter and Facebook and joining Facebook groups and being active and visible and volunteering at things. Volunteering for things is a surprisingly powerful way to meet people and make friends. And I fully recommend it whenever you're able to do it. There are also a lot of ways to fuck up networking. And this is something that I think a lot of people don't talk about. There's two sides to this coin. One of them is, if you meet somebody and it doesn't go well, they're probably not going to remember. And if, it feels awful at the time, especially if you do a faux pas, if you make a faux pas, I should say, or if you say something you shouldn't, it can feel world shattering. I've certainly done that many, many times. And thankfully, they're probably not going to remember it. You're fully going to remember it probably for the rest of your mortal existence, and that's fine. But they will not. And they will move on. And the number of people who I fully have met thought I made a fool of myself, and then was like, oh, I'm never going to speak to this person again. It's too embarrassing. I spilled shit all over myself, or I made fun of their game in front of them without knowing they worked on it. Done that a couple of times. That one's very easy to do. And then they're fully like, oh, I actually didn't remember that. Or I thought that was really funny. Is shocking. But generally, as long as you're being authentic, you're not putting on a personality or trying to be cooler than you are. As long as you are there to genuinely meet people and make friends, and you're not trying to get something out of people, there actually aren't that many ways to really fuck up networking. Even if you don't speak to somebody for a couple of years, that doesn't mean you fucked anything up, because that's just adult life. You know, we fall out of touch with people, and then we reach out and then realize, oh, I didn't need to worry. Like, it was fine. So the first serious thing I'm going to talk about is what I like to call like your digital presence. Other people call it your personal brand, your personal branding. It's basically the packaging you put around yourself when you're on the internet. The reason this is really important is because one of the first things that somebody's going to do after meeting you is look you up. That goes for anyone sort of you meet at a conference. That goes for any employer. This is really useful for, you know, when you're applying for jobs. Having now hired a bunch of people, I can tell you one of the first things I do is Google someone's name. I go through their social media and I try to get a sense of who they are as a person. And it's very obvious if someone hasn't paid that much attention to how they come across online. If you've got a DeviantArt from when you were 13 that you still haven't shut down, it's directly linked to your name and has incredibly embarrassing and questionable fan fiction on it. Now is the time to maybe think about taking that down, because an employer will see it. Mostly it's pretty funny, but every now and then there'll be something that you're like, oh, I truly wish that that was not on the internet, and it would have been very handy to know about that ahead of time. So the first thing that I want you to do is I actually want you to Google yourself right now. And I am going to do the same. Excuse my bajillion tabs. This is how I live my life. Don't judge me. But let's Google. So the first thing that comes up for me is my LinkedIn, my Twitter. Weirdly, a conference that I have spoken at a lot. My Moby games, many pictures of me and my partner, etc. Summerfall's website. So this is all stuff that I want here. I spent a lot of time trying to build up a digital presence so that when people Google my name, I come up and all of my content comes up. And I think this is the case until like page 7. Nope, that's still my stuff. That's so weird. Okay, that's new. That wasn't true 2 years ago. This is like the ideal situation. Though I'm sure that there are lots of things on here that I don't want to be on here anymore. I remember that at one point there was a podcast that I did where I was very hungover. And it was a podcast on romance and sex in video games. And I said some things that I probably shouldn't have said in a public sense. And they haunt me to this day. Be careful what you say on the internet. But these Google results are important. This is how somebody is going to get introduced to you. They'll scroll through this and they'll be like, oh, they'll gather all of these facts. And if it's not what you want them to see, or if it's very little, both of those aren't ideal things. Because particularly if someone's just trying to find you online, if they haven't even met you, you've got like a 10-second window to capture their attention and give a sense of who you are and what you're about and what you do and what you care about and what you want. It's really worth thinking about how you come across online. You want to make sure that you're easy to find, that your digital presence reflects what you actually believe and how you want to present yourself to the world, and that it's there to help you achieve your goals. There are 3 things that are worth thinking about here. The first is consistency. Take a look at all of your different social media profiles. 1, make sure that the privacy settings are the way that you want them to be. A lot of people tend not to think about that very much, but it's really worth just double checking all of your privacy settings are A-okay, and you're okay with what is being shown publicly and what isn't. Next, you want to make sure that you have like a little tagline, a one-liner, some kind of descriptor of who you are and what you do and what you're about, that effectively tells people what you want them to know about you. Doesn't have to, in fact, I was going to say it doesn't have to be long. It's actually better if it's short. Um, this is something that everyone struggles with. I really struggle with this. I've gone from having like a fully very, very professional bio to one that's like fully psychotic, filled with memes, to like everything, because at various times I've wanted to present myself in different ways. Normally I have something like, I have that I'm a business dork or something like that, to show that I'm, I don't take myself very seriously, that I really care about business. I'll put that I run Summerfall, and usually that I'm queer. And that's pretty much the extent of it. But the thing is, you want to know what that is. You want to think about how, if somebody reads only that about you, does it contain everything that you wanted to know? Particularly if you're looking for a job. Does it say that you're looking for a job? Does it say that you are available for work? Does it say how to contact you in the event that they're interested in getting you to do some freelance work? You want to make sure that you've got that tagline down. Then you want to make sure that you've got your visual presence consistent across all of your social media, so that it's easy for people to double check, like, okay, is this the same person on Twitter as it is on LinkedIn? It's very helpful to have like a pretty consistent digital presence. I have had some problems with having my contact details online at various points. I think it's a very useful and healthy thing to have like a separate email that's just for like public contact, and just route that through to your main email. You can filter it if you want to. At least then you can fully just shut it off if you get trolled, or if you get, God forbid, doxed or anything like that. You have a method to close the route to the outside world. Once you feel like you're relatively consistent across all of your platforms, think about how you want to come across, your persona, your digital presence, and then think about your goals. I'm just going to double check. Yes, cool. The goals, I'll talk about your persona in a second, but your goals are probably the most important thing to think about how you present, especially if you are looking for work, or if you're trying to progress in your career. You want to be taken seriously, or you want to be perceived in a certain way. The way that you behave online really affects that. And I'm not saying that you should feel the need to be incredibly fucking boring on Twitter all the time. I'm not saying that you need to act like a robot. In fact, the more human you are, the better in many ways. But I do want you to think about when as an employer, for example, as I scroll through somebody's feed of someone I'm potentially going to hire, or somebody that I've just met for the first time, I'm kind of trying to find out, like, is this person a good person? Are they someone that I would want to spend time with? Are they somebody who I'm going to vibe with? And it's worth thinking about what you put out into the world in that context, because what you put out into the world isn't you. It is a tiny little momentary fragment of a thought that you are having in that moment. And all everyone else gets to see is a collection of those tiny momentary fragments. So just be conscious of what you're putting out there and the cumulative effect that has. That includes things like, okay, make sure that people know that you're looking for work. Make sure that people know you want to meet people. We're talking about networking. Like, make sure that people know that you're willing to have a chat. Make sure that people know that you're interested in learning more about a specific thing. These are very useful to have and do. As I mentioned, like, your digital presence is just like a collection of little bits of you that you put out into the world. It isn't you. It's a persona that you curate. And that curation often happens unconsciously, in that it's, you think of a tweet and you put it out, or you write up a Facebook post and you put it out, and you don't think about how that comes across to other people. And I tend to be very anally retentive about these things. I've done a lot of marketing, but I find it very helpful to keep in mind that what I put out onto the internet isn't actually me. Like, it is a curated persona. And I get to decide, just like in real life, when I'm in a social situation, I get to decide how I'm presenting myself to the world. And I would much rather that be a conscious decision than an unconscious one, because just subconscious is a horrifying place. And it's very useful to just think through what you want to put out there. Part of that is being authentic and being intentional about your communication. Making sure that your wants, desires, and needs are known, and not bullshitting people, not using people, not memes are fine, memes are great, but don't denigrate people. Don't be a dick, effectively, is what I'm trying to say. Just remember that you want to make your social media representative of what you want people to think about you. So once you've got your digital presence fully locked down, you feel really good about it, let's talk about, the different venues for networking that exist. So I've split these into kind of three areas. There's networking events, conferences, and Discord and online spaces. They're all pretty different. So a networking event. I define a networking event as a specific space that, sorry, I see a question here. I'm just going to answer now about social media. Would not posting often, less than once a month, be detrimental to your social media presence? I don't think that's detrimental at all. I mean, I don't post very often anymore, but the fact that I have posted is useful. I don't think there's any negative to just having an inactive Twitter, as long as it still links to the places where you want people to go, like whether that's your own website, your email, something like your, other social media. Just remember that it's a place that will come up in your Google search, in your Google results. So make sure that what's on there makes sense for you. I don't think that not posting regularly is hurtful at all to your digital presence. Unless it's, stuff from like, the 15 years ago when I was growing up online and, fanfiction.net, I use my real name, and that, definitely come across a few of those. So events. I would define a networking event specifically as a place that is specifically intended for people to meet each other. So this is often like, here in Melbourne, we have an event called like IGDA Melbourne. It's a monthly event where it's like a monthly meetup where people go to meet each other and catch up. There are often different events like this within games and in games ancillary fields that are really useful to go to meet people. There are a lot of them, and depending on where you are, there's probably something near-ish to you. Sometimes they're hard to find though. So it does require a bit of research. Like I often find that Facebook groups are really good for this. Most major areas in the world have a dedicated Facebook group to groups and meetups. Meetup.com sometimes has stuff. I've had a lot less luck with that, but some people have a great time finding events there. But the thing is, you want to have an idea of what you're trying to get out of a networking event and the kind of people that you want to meet. You want to make sure you're going to the right events, that you aren't just sort of scattershot going to everything, because you'll wear yourself out. Meeting people is hard and exhausting, especially after, a pandemic that we're, still in the middle of. It's a lot. It's mentally exhausting. So think about, be intentional with where you go. Have a goal. I'll talk about this a little bit later, but I'm a big fan of intentional networking, where you have like a specific thing you want to learn or a specific area you want to move into, and you're trying to find information about that. For example, if you want to become better at Unity, there are so many Unity meetups all over the world. They're a great way to meet people who work in Unity who can help you. If you are really interested in narrative design, there are both digital and physical events that you can go to meet other people who are really interested in games writing and narrative design. The more specific it is, often the higher hit rate you'll get, that you'll find people that you really like and who really like you. It's worth taking the time to try to find them. It's really important that you don't wait for people to come to you at a networking event, because chances are it simply won't happen. Everyone's terrified. So like you go to a networking event and there's like 300 people, and I still have this today, and I've been in games like 10 years, I'm doing this like a long time, and I still get massive social anxiety every time I go to a new event. Like it's a very normal thing. But therefore it means that like if you're just there, like nobody's probably going to come up to you, because everyone's kind of in the same boat. Like nobody feels comfortable just going up and saying hello. And this is like it's probably the hardest thing about networking, at least for me, as a pretty socially anxious person. I have a real hard time just going up and saying hello. But once you do that, people generally are pretty thankful and appreciative, because it's a really hard thing to do. And it's a skill that you have to learn to cultivate. Not a lot of people can do that comfortably, especially in games. And people appreciate other people who are proactive about it. So be proactive about it. Thanks, enough meeting. There we go. So conferences. Events are an investment. Whether that's a investment of time or time and money is different, but it's still an investment. For example, like if an Australian goes to GDC, and I know it's the same from the UK, it's a fuck ton of money. Like it's so expensive to go to an event like GDC. So you want to make sure that the investment that you're putting into that event is worthwhile. And so I am a huge fan of like planning the way that I approach events. For conferences specifically, I think there are a couple of things that it's worth keeping in mind. Talks usually go online. Yes, it's nice to go to a talk at a conference. It is a really good way to learn things, but you can probably see that talk online later. What you don't have later is the opportunity to meet all of the people who are there. Networking is the most valuable thing you can get out of any conference, because people who are experts in their field are there to learn, and you have a breadth of different kinds of people from different areas who you can interact with and ask questions of and get to know. That doesn't happen very often, especially beyond our small communities. So that's the number one valuable thing about any conference. I mentioned earlier that I tend to be a little bit anally retentive. You don't need to do this, but I tend to like look up who's speaking, who's going, who, like for something like GDC, I will search GDC on Twitter, see who's got it in their name as like going to GDC, and just like see if there's anyone interesting that I really want to meet. Or like I will just run through my Twitter feed, or I'll ask who's going to GDC. This gives me a pretty good basis for maybe reaching out, saying hi. I would say more than 40 to 50% of like the best, coolest people that I've met in games have come from me seeing that they were going to an event, reaching out and being like, hey, I would love to meet you. Can I buy you a coffee? Can we organize a time to grab lunch? Most people are pretty flattered by that. And also a lot of the time they're there to network, to meet people. And even if you're like a really new person to the industry, or you're not in the industry yet, and you want to reach out to somebody who's really senior, that doesn't mean that they're going to say no. It does mean that you have to be prepared for the reality that they might not have time. But honestly, a lot of the time, a lot of people in games are really fucking nice. And they will take the time to grab a 20-minute call, like even if it's just like 20 minutes, that's great. The other thing I will say is repetition is really useful. I know I don't have it written here, but it is important. If you want to meet someone, I would really recommend like booking a meeting and then finding another way to catch up with them later in the same event. It really solidifies you in their mind. Repetition is how we form friendships. And if you can do that within a singular event, that's awesome. It's also worth keeping in mind that you could do that over multiple years. A lot of the people that I've met at GDC, I've met at like GDC. I followed them on Twitter. We've like interacted back and forth a few times. And then I have like done the same thing. I'm like, hey, let's catch up. Let's grab lunch. My calendar at GDC, when I'm not there for work reasons, is normally like 20 to 30 meetings deep of catch-ups, because that is like the most valuable thing that I could be doing there. It is exhausting, and you want to leave space so that if you do meet someone random, you're like, hell yeah, let's catch up. You've got space to like be like, hey, can we catch up? I've got some time here. That's really useful. But planning some of that in advance is a huge advantage, and it's not something that a lot of people do. It can sometimes feel like leading up to a big event that everyone must surely have already sorted their calendars, and they're going to be so busy. And for some people, that's true, but it is a shockingly low amount. Most people book their meetings for a big event in the 2 weeks preceding that event in a frightened panic because they haven't done it yet. You are not alone. And again, people appreciate when you are proactive. So be proactive. Nobody's going to do this for you. Like, you've got to go out there and reach out to people. And honestly, that's why I like doing it on like Twitter or Facebook or email. It is a lot less scary than doing it in real life when they're just across the room for me. It kind of removes a lot of the anxiety if I can sort of control that situation a little bit more. So it's a really effective tool. And I know that it's really simple, but it is so useful. The third kind of event is obviously like Discord and online. It's very easy to get overwhelmed in the sphere of how many online spaces there are. So I really encourage you to like join everything and then prune. Only stick with what works for you, what you're interested in. You know, throughout the pandemic, as I'm sure all of you have at various points, like I joined a bunch of Discords, I joined communities, I did catch-up calls, and some of them fully just did not work for me. Not the kind of people that I liked, not the things I was interested in, not active enough. Too active was one that came up a lot, where it was just fully overwhelming to try to like actually be a part of things. So curate the spaces that you engage in online, but make sure that you're interacting every now and then, because visibility is pretty important. If your kind of average person does have and I absolutely am a huge example of this, has the memory of a small goldfish for anything that is not incredibly critical to them. So they might really like you, but if you don't come across their feed or come across their screen at some point, they're going to forget that you exist until that time. And that's not a bad thing. That doesn't mean they don't like you. Often, like, it just means that, you know, they see thousands of names every day. But again, repetition is a great way of getting to know somebody. And this is why if you've gone to an event one year, met somebody, interacted with them online a little bit, and then met them at another event a year later, you feel a lot closer with them. It's as though you have spent a bunch of time together. And it is totally a sense of false closeness But it is a real thing that happens because you're repeatedly interacting positively with somebody, and that we can't help it as people. Like, that's just a human physiological reaction. As long as those interactions are positive, then we're going to like that person. It's not hard to get people to like you in that way. You kind of have to, as long as you're being positive and you're not being a dick, and you're interacting with somebody semi-regularly. I mean, I say regularly, I mean like every couple of months. It doesn't have to be all the time. But you have to work pretty hard to be an arsehole. But if you are really an arsehole, people do remember that. So keep that in mind. There was one Discord in particular that I joined in the pandemic that I found incredibly handy. It was a bunch of, it was a real mix of people of different disciplines and experience levels. It was really curated and smaller. And it was how I met people. And it's become a really important part of my everyday life, and has sort of replaced some of the local events that I was doing, because now I get to talk to people who I really respect on a daily basis. And so I make sure that I'm reading things. I spend 5 minutes every day just quickly following up on everything, responding if there are questions that I can help with, if there's a conversation that I feel like I want to be a part of, I will do that. Absolutely don't need to do that every day, but it is helpful to remember to be visible. Similarly, again, just be proactive, reach out to people, be the person who starts conversations, ask questions. If you know that there's somebody in a particular Discord server who has a particular skill set or worked on a game that you really liked, send them a question asking about it. Start a thread. Start a conversation, any conversation. Be that person. It's weird at first. It's hard to be that person, to be that proactive person. But as I said earlier, it is a skill and you'll get better at it. And people will really appreciate when you do that. How to navigate networking. So this can be complicated. The actual realities, especially face-to-face, of having conversations with people can be really intimidating and weird. We're going to talk about that a little bit. So first, I'm going to talk about introductions, which are a really useful and important tool, and then conversations, and we'll talk about them separately. So why are introductions important? I know this seems self-explanatory. I'm going to say it anyway. Introductions are kind of crucial, mostly because they confer respect and trust onto you. If you want to get to know somebody, or you want to meet somebody and you want them to think well of you, the best way to do that is to ask someone you both trust to introduce you. Everyone who introduces you to someone else confers some of the friendship and trust and respect that person has for them to you. And it's a really lovely and powerful thing. That's often how we meet friends, right? It's like friends introduce us to other friends. They come pre-vetted. It's great. Like a lot of that early communication of like sounding somebody out, are they an asshole, are they a predator, has already been done. So, you can just kind of dive in. And so when you want to get to know someone, the first thing that you should do is think about whether you might be able to get someone to introduce you. So doing your research into who might be a good fit for this is kind of difficult. But I really recommend the use of, oh God, I can't believe I'm about to say LinkedIn, but this is where LinkedIn comes in handy, because you can see who you know, whose connections with somebody else. Facebook and Twitter, like follow lists and friend lists, are also really handy. And you can just ask. It's okay to just ask for an introduction. Ask them for a favor. Say, hey, I noticed that you know this person. I really want to get to know them because X. Would you mind doing me a favor and introducing me to them? Give them context and details. Explain why you want to get to know them. Have a reason, obviously. And then if they say yes, help them out by reminding them of that context and then telling them what you want them to say about you. As somebody who gets asked for intros a lot, sometimes people are just like, I want to meet this person. And I'm like, great, cool. But I'm really busy. And I sometimes don't have the time to think through like the best introductory email. So I have definitely gotten into the habit of just being like, please write me the email you want me to send them. And then I will reword it in my own words because you know what you want me to say about you. And I'm totally fine. Like, I trust you. I want you to have the best introduction possible. So do that. Not everyone likes to do that. Some people really like to craft their emails. Some people will literally just be like, yep, cool. And they'll send off a 2-sentence email. And that's also great. It serves the same purpose. But you can also do this in person, grab a lunch, etc. And don't forget to follow up after they've introduced you and say thank you. It's really easy to forget this, but introductions they take time and energy, and they're a big favor. They can be the difference between getting a job and not getting a job, or getting a publisher and not getting a publisher. So take them seriously. Make sure you thank people. So conversations are a lot, especially when you don't know people, especially if you're socially anxious, which I know not all of you are, but I'm sure some of you are. A couple of things to remember. People are fucking terrifying. That's okay. They're probably as scared of you as you are of them. Talk to them anyway, because the people who are newer will really appreciate you reaching out and stepping over the bridge to them. And people who are more experienced remember what it was like to be junior, or at least the good ones. If they're a dick to you, fuck them. Like, you don't need them. That's fine. Go find somebody else. But the vast majority of people, like I said, are really nice. Like, most people are really happy to say hi. One thing that I've learned that I constantly have to remind myself of is that nobody's going to remember that awkward introduction. And every introduction, no problem, Molly. It was lovely to have you here. Every introduction is awkward. The first time you just walk up to somebody, especially if you're doing it in person, if you just walk up to somebody and you're like, hey, I'm Liam. I really like to go, I am X, compliment, question. It's a pretty useful formula. So like, I really like your cardigan. Do you work here? Or like, what do you do? What are you here for? How's your event been so far? It's always awkward. It's always awkward. It feels like time is stretching into infinity. But they're not going to remember that. They're absolutely not going to remember that. All they're going to remember is the conversation that follows. And it's important to listen after that point. Once you've asked somebody a question, they'll ask you a question. Your job, because you're getting to know people and you're trying to make friends, is to pay attention to what they're saying and ask questions. And just remember that everyone at a networking event is there to meet people. Like, again, they're going to appreciate you doing this because then they don't have to. So in terms of like general rules around this, if you see like two people having what clearly looks like a deep and meaningful conversation, as in their body language is closed, they're facing each other, they aren't looking at anybody else, that's a closed conversation. No bueno, we don't go there. But if somebody is having a conversation, they've got open body language, or they're just sitting alone, looking around, like, go say hello. It's totally okay to just go up to somebody and say hello. That's what we're there for. The other thing is like get your what I call your one-liner, like really nailed. Like work out how you introduce yourself, what do you do, like what are you there for, and always offer your name. Especially the second or the third time, a lot of people are really bad with names. It's okay. Don't expect them to remember your name. They're probably not going to. You're probably not going to remember everyone's name. It all kind of works out. But just act as though you don't think they remember your name. Be like, hey, sorry, Liam. And then just continue the conversation as though that little blip had never happened. Practice positive body language where you're able to. Sit up or stand up straight, like shoulders back. Don't cross your arms or legs. Don't have like closed body posture. I know it can be very tempting to do this because you're uncomfortable. Force yourself not to do it if you're able to. And if you feel comfortable making eye contact, do it. Don't do it constantly. That's really, people don't like that. It comes across very badly. The right amount of eye contact is eye contact every now and then. You like look around, talk, and when you say something meaningful, engage them in eye contact, look away. Smile at them, nod, engage as you're listening. Let them know that you are present and engaging in the conversation. And do actually actively listen, because it's your job to ask questions. So you need to remember what to ask questions about. When you come to the end of a conversation, or you need to go, or it isn't really going anywhere, if you like them, make sure to exchange contact information. Follow them on social media, email them, etc. But remember that it's okay to exit a conversation that's not going anywhere. You can just leave. You can just excuse yourself and go, hey, it was really lovely to meet you. I've got to go. That's totally valid. There are some people who are really persistent. That's when I really have to go to the toilet is a good one, or I have a meeting. There are definitely a bunch of meetings that mysteriously have cropped up at GDC that didn't exist previously to that conversation that I've had to go to. That's okay. Sometimes people just don't take the hint. I'll be your meeting. It's fine. As we're rolling through, the rest is going to be pretty quick. So intentional networking. One of the absolute best ways to get to know people is by asking them for help. Have a think about what skills do you want to learn? What do you want feedback on? What do you want information for? Find out who has that information, who has those skills, or knows what you want to know. Get an introduction to them. Ask for a call, or put a call out on Twitter. I've definitely done that before, or on social media. It's been like, hey, I'm really interested in X. Anybody willing to have a chat to me about that? And come prepared. Like when you get a conversation with somebody who is an expert in that field or has that information or is in the industry that you want to move into or has the skill set that you want to learn, have a list of questions. Don't try to wing it. It might not be won well. Just have a couple of questions that you can ask. Have a direction. Have a thing that you want to learn. People generally love to be asked for help. It's really validating to have somebody come up to you and say, hey, can you tell me about this thing that you know a lot about? Setting aside the fact that a lot of people in the industry have imposter syndrome, so they don't feel like they know anything. It's just nice to be asked for help. 30 to 60 minutes is a good period of time to ask for. I have a standing rule, for example, where I will give anyone who asks 60 minutes of my time. No questions asked. Whether I'll spend more time with you after that depends on what you do in those 60 minutes. But a lot of people have similar policies, especially as they're more senior. Like we don't have a lot of time, but we are prepared to make some time for you, and that's okay. And if you're senior, like the same thing goes. Like everyone's usually happy to meet people because it's hard. Meeting people is great, and it's hard. If it's in person, buy them a coffee. or at the very least, organize the place and the time. Don't expect the other person to do those things. Be the proactive person, do the research, find out where is good to go, and make it as easy as possible for them. Hey, what about 2 p.m. at, this place? That's ideal. And thank them. And then once you've had that meeting, send them an email being, thanks again. It was really great to meet you. This is basically how Summerfall was started. When Dave and I were first talking about Summerfall, we did a lot of planning, and then I was like, right, I know nothing. I need to learn a lot very quickly. And so I went through pretty much everyone that I could think of that I knew, and was like, okay, who has the skills that I'm going to need to learn? Who can give me feedback? And who's going to be brutal with their feedback? Because that's what I really need. And I reached out to 60 or 70 different people, and organized a lot of lunches and dinners, and I cooked for people. I went to their houses. We went shopping. We, did a lot of different stuff. I went on a trip around the US where I basically got the cheapest flights that I could and slept on people's couches and asked for a lot of advice. And it was the most useful thing I could have done. And I fully recommend doing that before any new venture. Be a node. Be somebody who introduces people to other people. So what is a node? Like I said, basically a person who connects one person to other people. They tend to know a lot of people and are always organizing introductions and hellos and events. And this is kind of who you should try to be, ideally. Not everyone feels super comfortable with this. I totally understand if this is not your jam, but it's going to be really helpful to learn these skills. Because again, very few people do this, and it will make you stand out. That means facilitating hellos. If there are 2 people who who you're just like, they're going to get along really well, or they should work together, or they're going to have really interesting things to talk about, take the initiative. Ask if they'd be interested in an introduction. And just generally be the person you wished you had met when you joined the industry. Help people get to know each other. Help introduce them to things. Often you get asked introductions from new people who you don't know very well. It's really important to vet them. Not everyone has the best of intentions or can carry themselves with the graciousness that we might hope. It's important to remember that when you give an introduction, it's your credibility and the trust with the person you're introducing them to that is on the line. And so if that person turns out to be horrible, it reflects on you. So you do need to put a little bit of research, and it's okay to say no to people. It's totally okay to be like, hey, sorry, I don't feel comfortable with that. General tips: follow up with your friends every now and then. Your contacts, your colleagues, just send them a message. How are you doing? I have a standing rule that every time I think of somebody, I try to send them a message. And that is a very useful, handy thing. Again, it's the repetition that builds relationships and makes us closer with people. Organize catch-ups, be proactive. When you meet people who you look up to, remember that they are just people too. Don't fan person over them. Don't freak out. As soon as you fangirl or fanboy, fan person, you build a bridge between you and that person that they can't cross. You put a wall in place because you put them on a pedestal. They can't come down from there. It's very hard. It takes a lot of energy and they're unlikely to do it. So the best thing that you can do is be like, hey, I really love your work here. Proceed with the rest of the conversation. Don't spend a lot of time on it. Just move on. And just get to know them as a person, because after all, they're just a person. Avoid more than 1 or 2 drinks max. I generally recommend not drinking at events. It's a lot safer. You never know what can happen, and you want to be, in full control of your faculties, especially when you're meeting new people. You want to present the best version of yourself. Be visible, volunteer, do events, help out. Don't expect anything from anyone at any point. We do all of this stuff because it's the right thing to do, right? Like, you want to meet people because you want to meet cool people. And you just can't kind of expect other people to do the same as you might do. And just remember that networking is about making friends. It's not about this like cold clinical process of like handing out as many business cards as you can. I know some people at like events like GDC will be like, I want to hand out 300 business cards while I'm there. And it's like, that's the opposite approach to what you should be doing. It's about meeting people and making friends. If someone gives you the ick or treats you poorly, you do not need a reason to quietly block or mute them on social media and not speak to them again. If you're uncomfortable with blocking them, I know there are certainly people who I really don't like, who I don't feel comfortable blocking because I am worried that they might have an effect on my career, or like they might retaliate in some way. It's okay to just mute them. You don't have to block them. You can also do the soft block. Just block them and then unblock them. Magic. Then they stop following you. It's brilliant. If you're not sure about somebody, ask someone you trust. And just remember, generally, the industry is a very small place. Things get around fast. So be the best version of yourself. Thank you.